I've been meaning to make this video for quite some time by now. And as the title says, here are several things I wish more people knew about competitive debating in general. But here's a brief disclaimer. I may call myself a former competitive debater, but I have to admit that I'm probably not one of the best debaters out there. So my observation is not from like the pinnacle of the debating community in some sense. Not even in my batch, I was the best itself. And I have other friends who have done way greater things in comparison. So I'm pretty sure there will be enough people who might question my credentials, and I understand that. But at the same time, I do personally believe that you don't have to paint the Sistine Chapel before teaching someone how exactly to hold a paintbrush. Now, number two, there are many videos out there covering similar topics. Most famously, the YouTuber Sarah Z covered something similar in her video. And number three, it has been some time since I've actually been a competitive debater. I've not been part of the competitive scene for quite some time. So maybe my critique or whatever I think about the competitive debating community in general is different from how it is in 2021. This is more of a perspective of when I used to attend tournaments and more perspective of the conversations I've had with other debaters within that period or non-debaters within that period. And the general public um, might have like a very different conception of what debating is today, and it's very different from the non-debaters that I used to speak to in the past. Lastly, my experience in debating might be very different from what you imagine to. My experience in debating is mainly done within three major formats: the British parliamentary format, Australasians, and the Asian parliamentary format. I've done a bit of the World Schools format, mainly coaching and educating, but I never did it competitively. I was only exposed to debating in university, not at school, so I never had that experience. So some of the things I mentioned may not be applicable in your specific debating scene or what format they've actually been through, and I am not exposed to it. And for example, I'm not so sure about the culture within forensics or public forum or most American formats. That's something I'm alien to. So those scenes and cultures surrounding that, they might be very different from what I have been exposed to. Now, with that out of the way, what exactly do I wish more people knew about competitive debating? Right, first of all, debates are not an exercise in truth seeking. Now, there's this weird perception in non debaters that I've spoken to that debates are needed to sort of like figure out what is the right policy or what often is the right moral stance for something. Now, we are often taught that parliamentary democracy is supposed to be the stage for policy battles, and competitive debating is meant to be a practice ground for that. But the reality is that debating can't determine if an idea is probably the best solution for something. Because debating, especially competitive debating, requires a mix of rhetoric and it's quite performative. Everybody is sort of like playing a role in forwarding something. It's almost like cosplaying. You're acting practically. It's closer to theater than actually crafting policy at the end of the day. And a lot of it is based on speculation on what do stakeholders actually want. It's not like within our 15 minutes prep we could actually consult a lot of stakeholders. A lot of it is based on assumptions or basically like analysis from what we've read in the past, and that is very dependent on the biases of the publication that you've probably been exposed to. At the end of the day, debating rewards either people who are good at rhetorics, or B, people who are able to reason and guide an audience member through a mechanism, a process, a consequence, or within a certain worldview on how they interpret certain facts. Now, a good speaker at the same time isn't necessarily the most quote unquote correct speaker. A good speaker is only good within the rules of a tournament. Now, there are times where good speakers have to make bad ideas sound good. For example, there are times where I personally have to argue why people don't deserve healthcare and why insurance companies should take over how we provide things for people. These are things that I personally think that I personally disagree with, but yet I have to talk about these kind of policies and I have to act as if I am that person, taking a whole new skin. Now, please don't debate against me about this specific worldview about hospitals and whether people deserve access to them or not. I don't think it's useful to have this conversation in this video, and it's quite tiring, to be honest, talking about this over and over again. The second thing I wish more people knew is that the debating world doesn't just belong to the logic bros, the kind of people who say stuff like facts don't care about your feelings and so on. I don't think debating is purely about that. I believe that debating is more diverse in comparison to that. I actually wanted to call this section "Not All Debaters Are Like Ben Shapiro," to be honest, but I think there is a bigger problem on how people perceive competitive debating that has existed way before the popularity of Ben Shapiro. But for those who are lucky enough to not know who Ben Shapiro is, first of all, I wish I have your life. I wish I could trade my life with yours. Your life seems more peaceful knowing that Ben Shapiro does not exist. And it's pure chaos when it comes to the debater sphere about this man. But for those who have been living under a rock, now Ben Shapiro is a conservative commentator who fashions himself as a undefeatable debater, to which I say, look at reason number one in this video, who goes around debating young college undergrads who have no experience in rhetorics or debating and destroys them. He talks really fast. He claims that his ideas are based on pure calculative logic. And it's so convenient that his conclusions tend to fit the mold of the professional class of the American Republican Party. Again, look at argument number one. Just because he may be more convincing in a certain area does not mean he is more correct in some terms. Always try to think about that. It's just a debate at the end of the day. And I guess to a lot of people, it's just a game in some sense. Now, I'm going to argue that his views are wrong, and I'm not going to convince you that my ideas are unbiased. I do have personal beliefs too, and I can say it's quite far from what Mr. Shapiro has to offer on a lot of things. But I'm gonna leave that for another day, for another video or something. But we're gonna focus about this whole logic bro thing. My problem with Ben Shapiro is that this man is often the first exposure for so many young debaters or non-debaters to the concept of debating. The YouTube algorithm has been pretty kind to him. And he has reduced debating into a cut and dry game of logic. Now, this is problematic in several ways. First of all, it scares away quite a number of non debaters, thinking that debating is a purely conservative domain to which, to be honest, and trust me, is not really. In the debater land, the most meme speech is about a communist revolution. And well, number two, many debaters think that they have to base their whole strategy around raw logic. And I think this is my main gripe about it. Like, it's true that logic is supposed to help you win, that it could help you guide through things, but a lot of what is perceived to be logic is often and not based on certain cultural biases, certain metrics, certain worldviews, certain lenses that could help you think in a certain way. And he managed to characterize or frame the idea of debating that debate is normally done without um, any input when it comes to emotions or empathy and so on. The problem with this is that it leads to a lot of speeches devoid of empathy or emotional intelligence. And at the same time, I also think it's horrible where he says stuff like facts don't care about your feeling and so on. Now, let's take a bit of a tangent here and talk about this whole phrase about facts and feelings. Now, facts and feelings don't have to be contradictory, and a lot of feelings are also based on facts, and vice versa. And often, a lot of facts are omitted because it doesn't fit a person's worldview, and they may have missed a certain idea. Like, for example, a person who grew up in Amsterdam may not know the full extent of the facts of an event in the middle of Bangkok. I'm not saying people have to know everything in a region before they could come to a conclusion or feel about something, especially if it's a moral question. But people have to keep an open mind about the possible perspectives of people on why they would feel in a certain way. Is it because the feelings are a response to a certain set of facts that they've never been exposed to at the end? And the worst part of all, it allows people to mask their narratives as facts. They just claim that whatever personal biases or what stories or what stereotypes they've heard in the past, they just assume that it's fact. It's cold hard data. But at the end of the day, cold hard data is still very dependent on the person reading or interpreting the facts of a situation. And ironically, this can be easily abused when someone with authoritarian tendencies could come in to dismiss the values of different groups of people, thinking that, oh, I'm the person who's making the rational, logical choice here, without actually understanding, the specific feelings and where these feelings actually come from in the first place. An authoritarian regime could easily come in and could easily say that a lot of values held by certain conservative communities are irrational feelings. Like they might say gun control is good because the presence of guns actually leads to more school shootings and so on. Like I could go on a tangent on all this about how a lot of quote unquote logical ideas from conservative fears could also be recharacterized as feelings, recharacterized as illogical ideas instead of rational conclusions for different things. But the point is that the phrase facts don't care about your feelings obscures whether something is a narrative or a fact. To quote a philosopher, a lot of times is pure ideology.
It's pure ideology.
Now, I'll save that for another day. Now, before I go off track, I just want to say that in the debating world, your speaking manner also plays an important role in how things are considered. How you may try to play some emotional. You might want to guilt trip somebody along those lines. So it does show that it's not just the domain of logic bros in some sense. You could use emotions within it, though I probably should not use the word guilt trip in the future when referencing this. Um, in the debating formats that I know or the ones that I'm exposed to, your speaking manner is at least one third of your scores, and um, you're gonna convince a wide range of people who have very different values. The world is pretty diverse. We all have different ways in how we interpret things, and the things that we care for, the things that we are emotional about, may have logical roots, and things that you assume are done based on a pure logical basis might have emotional roots and so on. So while the logic bros today are um, having their moment with Ben Shapiro, they have to consider that Ben is trying to present a very lopsided worldview. Again, refer to argument number one for this. And he is trying to appeal to the people who already have a certain set of values. They have a certain set of metrics and lenses. He has massaged people's ideas to accept a single worldview that's close to his and see the positions to be rooted in quote unquote facts, in a lot of them. But yeah, anyway, that's what I want more people to know about the debating world. This list could be longer, but I'll save that for another video. And if you are a debater, do tell me what are the misconceptions that other people may have about this game that we are in. Substance. Thank you.